Hello viewers, my dear friends, all students. My name is Ashok Sen Gupta from School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. In today's topic, we will continue the determinants of dividend policy. So, in previous topic, we understand about the concept of dividend policy, why we use dividend policy, and we discussed some of the determinants like legal requirements, time of the age of the company, trends. Now, by continuing the previous lecture, the next determinant of dividend policy is government economic policy. So, look what is the restrictions given by the government. Government was as was the case when temporary restriction of payment of dividend ordinance was imposed. In 1974-1970, companies are not allowed to pay not more than 33% of their profit or 12% on the paid up value of the shares, whichever is lower. So, these are the factors, these are the important factors we must consider about, because we are all companies, all industries have to follow the norms of the government, and government economic policy has been changed accordingly due to various factors. This was the case in 1974 and 1975, and our country was at that time a very tough situation. Similarly, in cases of recessions, depressions, company have to follow the policies offered by the government. They cannot follow their own dividend policy, because if government restricted that, and now it is all know that SEBI is the umbrella organization which look after all the activities of the company dealing with the capital market, and paying of dividend is a part of capital market. So, under the guidelines of the SEBI, companies need to focus on the or follow the dividend policies. Sometime it can be possible a government restricted to pay the dividend and said to company to they are increasing the taxes and pay the tax, because we need fund, government need fund. So, policies are adjusted according to the economic policies, or we say dividend policies are adjusted according to the economic policies of the government. Ministry of Corporate Affairs look after all these things, and now SEBI from 1992 look after the matters, how much percentage, what is the cap, what is the functioning of the various companies, all are the part of the functioning of the SEBI. Therefore, dividend policy also impacted by the government economic policies. If we saw in 1991-92, when our country reform our economic policy and we accept the liberalization, privatization and globalization concept. By utilizing, by using, by this economic policy, it is quite helpful for the companies, and they also make change to the dividend policies. Companies started earning good, they are now free because of the privatization factor, liberalization factor. They are now to free, having license to produce, give competition to the government agencies or foreign companies. Foreign companies visit to the come to the India, establish their setup, give competition to the domestic companies. So, there is a lot of competition, and which finally helpful to make a proper decision making of dividend, only because they need to sustain. They need to sustain. Within a month, if you saw a newspaper, various companies launched their IPOs. Zomato oversubscribed, Rolex rings oversubscribed, KFC oversubscribed. So, why companies are going for the IPO? Because they find that one capital market is the best market to collect the fund for their capital expenditure, and they are quite aware about the various policies of the government, and they feel that they can sustain for the long time, they serve their equity shareholder for the long time, that therefore, they come forward and launch the IPOs, because launching an IPO is a very risky factor during the pandemic. Even though we are fighting with the COVID situation is not 100% clear now. We have a news that reducing cases are reducing, we have very less cases in Uttar Pradesh or in all over the India. Most of the every day lakhs of people get vaccinated, but even though cases are there, and still we have a fear of various other version of COVID-19. So, in fact, all these factors are still in the environment, business environment. Companies are choosing the capital market is for their fund, for their financial fund. They require capital and they go for the capital market, and through shares they are going for that, and their shares going to oversubscribed. People are will to put their money there. So, this is because of the economic policies. When any person gets the share, then he or she must get dividend if company earns profit. Rate of the dividend not fixed, but company pay the dividend. Even though rate of dividend is not fixed in equity shareholders, people are investing in equity shares. So, this is the seventh topic, government economic policies. taxation policy. Taxation policy of the government also affects the dividend decision of the firm. A high or low rate of business tax affects the net earning of the company. Thereby its dividend policy. Similarly, a firm dividend policy may be detected by the income tax status of the firm, of the shareholder, of the shareholders. If the dividend income of the shareholder is heavily taxed during a income bracket, the shareholders may go for cash dividend or preferred bonus shares and capital gain. Even dividend is tax free, income of dividend is also already tax payable. You do not need to pay the tax on the dividend, because company pay the tax and after paying the tax they pay the dividend. So, whatever you earn you do not need to, pay the tax. But when any shareholders receive high level of dividend, then it includes in its income, उसकी इनकम में जुड़ता है, वो ऑलरेडी टैक्स दे चुका है, बाद में एग्जम्पशन मिल जाएगा, पर उसकी इनकम में जुड़ता है, टैक्स ब्रैकेट में आ सकता है. इसलिए उससे अवॉइड करने के लिए टैक्स ब्रैकेट में ना हो, वो प्रेफरेंस शेयर या कैश डिविडेंड इस तरह की अदर कैपिटल गेन की बातें वो सोचते हैं, करना चाहते हैं. If government increase the taxes on the firm, then the level of dividend or the amount of dividend payable to the shareholders will decrease, कम हो जाएगा. अगर पेमेंट जो है आपका टैक्स जो है वो पे कर ज़्यादा हो जाए तो कम हो जाएगा. सो टैक्सेशन पॉलिसीज इम्पोर्ट बाय द गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो इफेक्ट द डिविडेंड पॉलिसी, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट इंक्रीज द टैक्स ऑन द कॉर्पोरेट, then the profit will decrease, and by decreasing profit it is difficult for the company to maintain the taxes, for the companies to maintain the maintain the dividend policies or dividend level. भाई आप 1 लाख रुपीस कमा रहे हैं, 33 मान लेते हैं, उसमें टैक्स लग गया आपका, जो बचा वो आप ही तो आप डिविडेंड को दोगे, एज ए डिविडेंड दोगे. टैक्स बढ़ेगा तो आफ्टर टैक्स प्रॉफिट जो कम ही होगा, और नो फर्म want to pay dividend out of its pocket. Therefore, tax policies of the government also affect the dividend decision of the firm. नेट अर्निंग कम हो जाती है. Talking to the next determinant or factor, this is a very important factor in inflation, because we all from the rich to poor face little bit impact of inflation. Rich people feel little bit, poor people feel hard. So, first of all, inflation is, what is inflation? Inflation occurs when value of the money decreases, or you need to pay more for a product or a services. You need to pay more for product or a services. Like nowadays, in some cities, cost of petrol or price of petrol move up more than 100 rupees. When price of petrol diesel increases, it indirectly increase the prices of the other related goods. So, transportation cost will increase, and when transportation cost increases, then value of or the prices of the product increase on the same ratio. So, this is inflation. So, a general public, a person whose day to day requirement is fulfilled by dividend, amount paid by the dividend, and suppose due to inflation cost of the daily needed item increases, then he or she will not able to maintain its requirement only by dividend. Okay, only by dividend, like packed milk rate increases by 1 rupee. 1 rupee is increasing, 1 rupee is very important thing for a even for a small people or middle class people. Increasing of rate of wheat, rices, even vegetable oils, gas, cooking gas, all are increasing, and a person, retired person, widows, as I discussed earlier time, whose earning is depend on the dividend, then by increasing by inflation is very difficult to survive. At the one hand, companies profit is declining because of the inflation, generally cost of production increases. When cost of production increases, profit decline, because we cannot able to increase the sale price due to heavy competition, except in some cases. When we are not able to increase the sale price and our profit reducing up to certain percentage, our dividend payment also reduced, also will reduced, and when we get less dividend as compare or expected, it is quite difficult to survive to the person whose sources of income is only from dividend. Therefore, inflation acts as a constraint in the payment of the dividend. Profit as available from the profit or loss account on the basis of historical cost have tendency to be overstated in time of rising of price due to the overvaluation of stock trade, right for depreciation or fixed asset at lower rate. As a result, when prices rise, fund generated by depreciation would not be adequate to replace the fixed asset, and hence maintain the same asset capital retain is quite difficult. Otherwise, imaginary and inflationary book profit is due to rises and amount of payment of dividend are much more than warrant of profit. So, it is quite difficult for the company also, because as we know, whatever the amount in accountancy we studied about that, there are different way of dividend. Amount of dividend what we have we deducted from profit, we keep it in as a fund and use that fund for the replacement of the same asset. But due to the inflation, if the cost of the asset or price of the asset will increase, then it will not fulfill, or depreciated value will not fulfill the overall price of the fund, or sorry, asset. So, it is a impact of the inflation on dividend policy. Next is control objective. When a company pay high dividend out of its earning, it may result in the dilution of both control and earning of the existing shareholders. As in case of high dividend payout ratio, the retained earnings are insignificant and the company will have to issue new shares to raise the fund to finance its future requirement. कंपनी ने अगर ज़्यादा डिविडेंड दे दिया तो उसके पास बचेगा कुछ नहीं, अपने फ्यूचर रिक्वायरमेंट के लिए, तो उसको और ज़्यादा शेयर्स बेचने पड़ेंगे, शेयर होल्डर्स को ऐड करना पड़ेगा. कंट्रोल ऑफ द एग्जिस्टिंग शेयर होल्डर विल डाइल्यूट if they cannot buy the additional. Control of the existing shares will be dilute if they cannot buy the additional share issued by the company. Similarly, issue of new share will cause increase in the number of equity shares and ultimately cause of lower earning per share. As I told you, if number of equity shares increases and pricing or the profit remain the same, it will reduce the EPS, the prices in the market. Thus, under these circumstances, to maintain control of the existing shareholder, it may be desirable to declare low dividend and retain to finance the future requirement. It is a suggestion to give a limited amount of dividend and retain the remaining for the future, requirement. If you add more and more shareholders, then it will dilute the holdings, it will dilute the control of the firm, and control is moved toward the shareholders, and it was quite difficult in future to maintain the control. Okay, 11th point is requirement of institutional investor. Dividend policy of a company can be affected by the requirement of institutional investor such as financial institutions, bank, insurance corporation, etc. These investors usually favored a policy of regulatory payment of the cash dividend and stipulate their own term with regard to payment of dividend in equity shares. When company launch the IPO or company launch the shares in the market, they have some quotas like 36% to the retail holders, 24% to the institutional buyers. So, they have some quotas as per the guidelines of SEBI and all this thing. So, when they issue the shares to the institutional investors such as bank and corporations, these investors favor the policy regular payment of cash dividend. They are having their own kind of term and conditions. They have their own kind of term and conditions. Stability of dividend. Stability of dividend is another important guiding principle in the formulation of dividend policy. Stability of dividend simply refers to the payment of dividend regularly and the shareholder generally preferred payment at regular interval of time. Regular dividend, आप पे करते रहिए, टाइम पे करते रहिए, रेगुलर डिविडेंड उनको देते रहिए, दे विल फील हैप्पी. Some companies follows a constant dividend per share while other follow constant payout ratio, while there are some other who follow a policy of constant low dividend per share plus extra dividend in a year of profit. There are various combinations. Companies have decided क्या देना है, कांस्टेंट देना है किसी को, किसी लो अभी लो दीजिए, जब प्रॉफिट ज़्यादा हो तो जब बढ़ा दीजिए, ठीक है. सो देयर आर all the factors which help in dividend policy making. So, liquid source, the dividend policy of the company is also influenced by the ability of liquid sources. Although a firm may have sufficient ability of profit to declare dividend, yet it may not be desirable to pay dividend if we do not have the sufficient liquid source. Not desirable कि आप पूरा अपना फंड दे दीजिए, आपके पास पैसा नहीं है, लिक्विड सोर्स ऑफ फंड नहीं है, सैलरी देने के लिए पैसा नहीं है, रॉ मटेरियल देने के लिए खरीदने के लिए पैसा नहीं है, पर आपने डिविडेंड पे कर दिया. हैंस लिक्विड पोजीशन ऑफ ए कंपनी इज इंपॉर्टेंट कंसिडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया. आपकी लिक्विडिटी पोजीशन क्या है, करंट लायबिलिटी करंट एशियो का रेशियो क्या है, क्विक रेशियो क्या है, करंट रेशियो क्विक रेशियो, दे नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. वर्किंग कैपिटल रेशियो क्या चल रहा है आपका, व्हाट इज योर वर्किंग कैपिटल रेशियो, इट इज very important. If you have a good liquidity ratio, then it is always good to pay the dividend proper time. Otherwise, if you don't have a good liquidity ratio, then if you don't have a good liquidity ratio, then it is not desirable to pay the dividend. If company better to declare dividend stock or issue a bonus share in existing shareholders. The issue of the bonus share also amount of distribution of the earnings among the existing shareholders without affecting the cash position. आप बोनस शेयर इशू कर दीजिए, कैश डिविडेंड नहीं होगा आपका. So these are the some determinants we discussed today, and hope you understand the various factor determinants in dividend policy. These are the some points, books I referred you from where you get these points. Thank you for watching this video.